Hello, it's Karen Berniston here with my monthly designer challenge video. The theme this month is Happy New Year, and I will be using our postage pop-up in a little bit of a different way to create 5 layers of floating fireworks. I used 5 dies on this project, 3 from our latest release, the postage pop-up, the fireworks, and Happy New Year. And then I added to that our Celebrate and Numbers die sets. I'm going to start by making the background of my card. So I've started with a piece of heavyweight cardstock. Now it doesn't matter the color, I just happen to have black in a heavyweight. And now I'm going to use that fireworks die to cut various holes out of that piece to make a pleasing fireworks background plate. You can use any die cutting machine that can accommodate a wafer thin die. Today I'm using my Spellbinders Platinum 6. So now I'm just going to move that firework around and cut it throughout the plate. I'm going to mix in some of those starburst fireworks as well. Okay, and once I have a pleasing arrangement, then I can remove all of the fireworks, and now I have my embossing plate. Now I can use that plate to emboss the background of my card. So I've cut 2 pieces of cardstock to the same size as the plate, 5 inches wide by 6 inches tall. And I realized that it's shifting, so I'm going to use some temporary tape to hold those pieces together. And what I've done is set up my machine for an embossing sandwich. So I'm treating it as though I am embossing a wafer thin die. So whatever machine that you have, set it up for an embossing sandwich and send it through as though you were embossing a die. And what's going to be the die, in this case, is going to be that embossing plate. And now I have that cool embossed firework background piece, and I could use it as an emboss or I could flip it over and use it as a deboss. And then the plate I made, I can just keep reusing that. So I'm going to use that 2 more times for this card. Same thing, just set it up for an embossing sandwich and send it through. And start looking through those decorator dies you have, because you could make plates like this for flowers, birthday candles, really anything that has kind of a unique shape to it, stars and streamers. There'd be lots of fun embossing plates that you could make. Now I decided to use the embossed side of my pieces, and I'm going to take a brayer with some black ink and just roll across them so that the embossed fireworks will show up a little bit more. And the brayer is also going to kind of add some color to the background, but there's going to be a little bit of a halo effect around the fireworks themselves, and I kind of like that. And then after brayering my pieces, I did use my trimmer to take a little bit off of all 4 sides so that when I glued those inside a 5x6 top fold card, I would have a little border of my card color around the pieces. For the card itself, I started with a piece of cardstock 5 inches wide by 12 inches tall, scored it in the middle for folding. I will be using the mechanism from the postage pop-up. Now, instead of assembling it in the usual manner, I'm going to do a little bit of an alternate assembly. So I've die cut 2 of the boxes out of a medium weight cardstock. It does not have to be heavyweight. It could honestly probably be lightweight. And I'm working all of the folds in the piece as mountain folds. So a mountain fold means you're folding away from yourself. I will often break the fold towards myself first and then reverse it. What I want to do is locate the center of the upper square. So I'm going to fold down on one of the long folds, and then I'm going to make a pencil line at 3/4 of an inch off of that fold. So that's an 1.5 inch square at the top of the box. So I'm just trying to find the center of it. So that's 3/4 of an inch. Okay, and then now I just need to fold all the folds in the second box. Again, they are all going to be mountain folds. Now, ultimately, but not yet, those 2 boxes are going to glue to each other so that the small tabs are towards the inside. But we have some other steps to do first. I've cut some 1/4 inch strips of a thick plastic. So that plastic is 1 millimeter thick. I buy those in big sheets off of Amazon. If you look around the house, maybe you can find a thicker, clear material that something came packaged in, like a blister pack, and then you could chop that up. But I want 1/4 inch strips, and then I'm going to do varied lengths on those. The first length I'm going to use is for the center, and that one's going to be 5 inches. You can cut that thicker plastic with your scissors, but it's hard to use a slide trimmer on it. So it does really need a guillotine trimmer when you're making those 1/4 inch strips. Okay, so a dry adhesive with those clear acrylics is a good idea. So that could be a little strip of tape, that could be a regular old tape runner, that could be some glue dots, just something dry. And what I want to do is I want to attach that acrylic strip just above a tab on that front face of the box, and then extending kind of at an angle so that the top of the strip is sort of centered over the middle part of the box. And then I'll add a little bit more dry adhesive on top of the acrylic strip, and then I can switch to my glue to the other side because that's just paper to paper. All right, so I'm skipping the middle part. That's important, skipping the middle part. And now I'm going to kiss connection those two boxes together. So the tabs line up at the bottom, all of the folds line up, and I'm just making sure I have those nice and straight and connected together. There is no adhesive on the tabs because those are going to attach to the card. And then I can even just use a little clip to hold that glue side until that sets up. All right, so here's my little floating floor, and I've got that pencil line that I made, and what that's going to be used for is to cut a section out of the middle so that I have another place to make some acrylic strips, to make some fireworks pop up. So how am I going to do that? I've folded up the middle, and then I'm going to take my scissors, and I'm going to cut through all the layers up to that pencil line. So how far in? I mean, you're just doing this by eye. You just want a little chunk out of the middle. How wide is the chunk? I don't know, about a third of the box, something like that, a little bit more than a quarter of an inch, something that you can put those strips down in because you've cut those strips already and they are a quarter of an inch, so a little bit wider than that. Let's say 3/8 of an inch, but I wouldn't measure. And then you're just going to fold down those two sections underneath the box. Okay, so now we've kind of got a hole in our floor, but then now we have two additional supports underneath. All right, this is now ready to install inside the card. I do not think it's easy to try to attach all of those tabs at the same time. I'm going to start with just the ones in the center. Okay, so a strong adhesive on those 4 tabs, and they are going to straddle the fold of the card. Now, could they go anywhere along the fold? Yeah, I'm just going to try to center them. And I think the easiest way to get those kind of straddled over the fold is actually to back fold the card a little bit, and then I can kind of just go in there and hold the tabs on either side of the fold. So we want kind of the stalk of that floor to be directly over the fold of the card, and then the 4 tabs are attached on either side of the fold. Okay, so just making sure that those are attached nicely on either side of the fold. I want to skip the center ones for now, so I'm actually going to fold them up and out of the box so that they're out of the way. And then what I want to do is I want to collapse this whole mechanism down on the bottom half of the card. And as I do that, I'm realizing, you know, what would be best is if I took these center ones and just made them straight for now. So I'm just going to straighten those out completely so that they're not, you know, crumpling. And then I'm going to fold the whole mechanism down. And then I notice that one of my little tabs has popped off. So that's a good chance right now to go in there with some glue and get that little tab glued back down to the card. Okay, once that glue has set up and my tab is attached again, now I can add some glue to this tapered tab to attach it. So keeping everything in that flat position, I'm going to add my glue to that tapered tab. Keep everything nice and flat. I'm going to close the top half of the card against that exposed adhesive. It's going to pick up that tab in exactly the right spot. Now you got to be a little patient with glue. What I like to do is just, you know, give it a good squish in the closed position, and then the first time it opens, I let it go just as far as it wants to go. And then I go in there with my thumbs and I hold that tab down as I open it that first time, and then I can even give it a really good press in the open position. All right, so one half is done, and now I'm going to repeat that process for the other half. So the adhesive is going to go on the tapered tab. I wouldn't want to guess where it goes. I want to close it down, stack it, the whole mechanism back on top of each other, close the card, and pick up that other tab. So once again, being a little patient with glue, letting it open just as far as it wants to open so that I can get in there with my thumbs, hold that tab down while I give it a really good press. Okay, let's take a look at a side view. You can see I've got that floating floor. It's working fine. What we want to do with those extra little wings that are sticking up is make 2 more supports underneath the floor. But we don't need them for the pop-up to work. What we need them for is to have a surface to add more of those acrylic strips. So I'm going to add the adhesive under the fold, so the foot part that's going to attach to the card. Then I'm going to wiggle that down, and then I want to attach it to the card I think the easiest way to do that is not to guess. So in other words, not just to reach in there and press it to the card, although that might work. It's better if you close the card, because then the card will just tell you exactly where it needs to go to give you that nice vertical support underneath the box. Okay, repeating that process on the other side. So the outer panel gets the adhesive. I fold it up underneath the box and kind of just get it started as an L shape. So I'm not pressing it to the card. I'm just kind of starting it as that L shape as I close the card. And let's see, I've got, oh, there it is. See, you can see I've got it as an L kind of shape started. The fold is in it. And then as I close the card, it's going to attach that section that has the glue on it to the card in exactly the right position to create that vertical support. Okay, and there it is. We now have a floating floor that has 5 sections that can all get those acrylic strips, so we can really make an impressive fireworks display. Okay, the 2 acrylic strips that I'm going to use in the center sections are going to be 4 inches tall. So I have to go a little bit shorter on these because I'm now moving myself closer to the outer edge of the card. So as I move closer to the outer edge of the card, the embellishments have to get shorter so that they can still be hidden by the card itself. So the tallest strip goes in the middle, and that one's the 5-inch strip. And then everything going outward will have to be a little bit shorter. And it's not like you couldn't trim it after the fact. You could get them attached and then trim them later, but I just started with 4-inch strips on these 2. If I had it to do again, I might just put 1. I ended up putting 2, but it got a little, kind of crowded in there. So it's up to you. I ended up just putting 2 of them in that section, 2 4-inch ones, and just kind of splayed them out a little bit at different angles. All right, so I went 5 inches, 4 inches, and now I'm going to go 3 inches for the furthest ones outward. So the outer strips, I did 3 inches on those acrylic strips. Once again, I'm using a tape runner because dry adhesive with the acrylic is a good idea. But then when I go to add the fireworks later, I'm just going to use my glue because it's hard to, the fireworks are so delicate, it's hard to get dry adhesive on them just in the area where they're going to cut the acrylics or touch the acrylic. So I am going to have to kind of use, wait for glue to set up on that acrylic when I go to add the fireworks. But for attaching them to the box, I could just use a dry adhesive. So that could be tape or a tape runner. Okay, now moving forward in the card, I did 4-inch strips on the center section, and then I actually don't want to see the adhesive behind the acrylic. So for the front section, I'm going to just cut a little slit against the fold and make it a little bit wider than a single slit because, the acrylic has some thickness to it. So I'm kind of taking like just a little sliver of the cardstock out against the fold. Let me just trim off the little sliver. And then now what that allows me to do is attach those 3-inch acrylic pieces to the inside of the box so that I don't see the adhesive. Okay, so that's the only reason I did that, is so that I wouldn't see the adhesive on the front of the box. So just cut myself some little slivers so that I can get those acrylic strips in and attached to the inside of the box. Okay, for fireworks, I decided on glitter colors, and I found this pad that had 5 different colors of glitter. I'm going to use everything except the black, and I just started cutting. So, I probably have too many fireworks, but I cut all of the pieces out of the fireworks set out of all 4 of those colors. And then before I start adding them to my acrylic strips, I decided I wanted to patch the top of the box where those holes are. So I just cut some pieces of black cardstock that would span that distance. The width on those pieces will be 1.5 inches. The height will be a little bit less than 3/4 so that you can account for the fact that you have the acrylic in there. You don't want those pieces bunching in the fold. They're really just about kind of removing the holes. So feel free to cut them a little bit smaller. They don't have to be, the exact size to fit in there. I did a quick check and discovered that the center stalk at 5 inches was just a little bit too tall to hold a big firework. So I took a little bit off the top. Now I'm going to add a miniature glue dot. Then I'm going to add one of my big fireworks to that. And then I'm going to check it. And it is almost in the card. You can see just a little bit out. So I could rotate it a little bit to get that bit of the firework in, or I could just lower it a little bit until it stays in the card. So I'm working on the center stalk first, the tallest one, making sure that stays in the card. And then from here, I'm going to go around and just do the same thing with the other ones. So my kind of rule of thumb was if I had enough of the firework that was attaching to the acrylic block that I could use a miniature glue dot, I did that. On some of them, just because of where I wanted them, I ended up having to use glue and then just kind of holding it until it's set up. And I won't make you watch me put together this entire fireworks display because it would be a pretty boring video. It's essentially just me adding a firework to an acrylic strip, closing the card, seeing if it sticks out, moving it, rotating it, switching to a different firework, whatever I need to do to get that to stay in the card. And then just lather, rinse, and repeat. This is a great chance to listen to a podcast or put on an audiobook and just enjoy making your fireworks display. So I'm going to skip to the ta-da moment, which is my completed fireworks display. And then I also added those 2025 numbers that I cut out of that number set and some gold foil cardstock right to the front of the box. And then I was so enjoying my podcast that I forgot to turn the camera on when I assembled the Happy New Year, but it's just a shadow piece, and then you have the letters for happy and new and year, and you just put those on that piece. You can sink the happy letters down through the die for perfect placement. Back to the postage pop-up, I cut one of the pole arms, and the notched end of the pole arm will go right through the slot in the postage pop-up box. And I'm not using it to animate the box itself because we did that alternate assembly. But what that will do is it will just give a little lift to the Happy New Year so that it'll also be kind of popped up a little bit. So just kind of figuring where I want my greeting to go, I can trim off the excess of the pole arm so that I only am left with enough to attach Happy New Year to it. And then to avoid having glue where the holes are, I'll actually put the adhesive on the back of the Happy New Year piece, just kind of in that center section that I know is going to attach to that pole arm, and then just go in there and attach it only to the pole arm. And then now that will offer a little bit of motion and lift to that greeting. So as the card closes, it'll slide forward and go flat, and then as it opens, it'll pull it up and add a little bit of a lifted angle. And then to finish out the interior decor, I'm just going to use all of those stars that I cut. So back when I was cutting fireworks, I went ahead and cut the stars. It cuts 6 at a time, 3 big and 3 smalls. So I had them out of all the colors, plenty of stars. And I just went through and made a fun little kind of double swoop out of the stars for the front panel of the card, and then I just repeated it for the back panel of the card. For the front of my card, I have my embossed and brayered piece, and for this one I think I'm going to overlay some glitter fireworks over the top of the embossed ones and just offset them a little bit so that the embossed firework becomes a little bit of a drop shadow for each of the glitter fireworks. And I still had leftover stars, so I just used all those stars in the open spaces around the fireworks. And then I'm going to add the word celebrate to a 1-inch strip of black cardstock and then glue that across the fireworks piece for the front of the card. And then I just need to glue my finished card front to the front of the card, remembering that this is a top fold card, so orienting everything correctly. My finished card is a 5x6 top fold card that can be mailed in an A7 envelope. Okay, let's talk about potential variations. The biggest variation is start with some color. So I chose to do these metallic colors with kind of a black gray background to simulate the night sky. But this would be a beautiful card done in brightly colored fireworks. So try it with color. That would be the first variation. The second thing is it doesn't have to be New Year's, right? But this is a celebration card. So change out that Happy New Year inside for happy birthday or congratulations. And you can use this kind of card idea year round. Obviously take off the 2025 as well. And definitely be thinking about what you could use this technique for other than fireworks. So could it be a flower garden? Could it be a bunch of balloons? How about some clouds and birds on the spokes? So really think about those other themes for this technique. Check the description box below for supply links as well as a link to the blog post. On the blog post is where you will find photographs of my card as well as links to all of the wonderful New Year inspiration by our very talented design team. Thanks for watching. If you click on the website link, you'll go to KarenBurniston.com where you can purchase these dies as well as find links to our other social media accounts. You can subscribe to this YouTube channel and check out some of my other videos. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.